everyone, I'm Kate Andrews, and here's a look at what is going on this week in the news. And we begin from the Vatican. Pope Francis has chosen the theme for the 2016 World Day of Migrants and Refugees. Migrants and Refugees Challenge Us, the response of the Gospel of Mercy, is the focus of the day, which will take place during the Year of Mercy. Closer to the celebration, which is January 17th at the Vatican and a full week in January for the United States, Pope Francis will issue a special message. The day is meant to be marked with reflection and prayer on the situation of migrants and refugees. It will include a special reminder that welcoming the stranger is a corporal work of mercy. Staying with news from the Vatican, last week during his weekly general audience, Pope Francis spoke about celebrating life. But life cannot be all play and no work, which is what he spoke about during this week's audience, the importance of work and of having a purpose. Rome Reports has more.
The Pope's weekly general audience is celebrated indoors during the summer. Usually it's to escape the extreme heat, but the most recent audience was held indoors to avoid intense rain. After greeting pilgrims for a few minutes, the Pope began his catechesis. He focused on the nature of work, which he said also has a spiritual dimension.
L'impegno del lavoro e la vita dello spirito nella concrezione cristiana non sono affatto in contrasto tra loro. È importante capire bene questo. Preghiera e lavoro possono e devono stare insieme, in armonia, come insegna San Benedetto. La mancanza di lavoro danneggia anche lo spirito, come la mancanza di preghiera danneggia anche l'attività pratica.
Further, the Pope explained that families need to work to maintain a dignified life. He added that the family is where children should develop their work ethic.
La famiglia educa al lavoro con l'esempio dei genitori. Il papà e la mamma che lavorano per il bene della famiglia e della società.
At the same time, the Pope denounced the way that the economy often sees families as an obstacle against productivity. He said that when this happens, humanity is fighting against itself. He lamented that this mentality seems to affect poor families more than anyone.
Quando il lavoro si distacca dall'alleanza di Dio con l'uomo e la donna, quando si separa dalle loro qualità spirituali, quando è in ostaggio della logica del solo profitto e disprezza gli affetti della vita, l'avvilimento dell'anima contamina tutto, anche l'aria, l'acqua, l'erba, il cibo. La vita civile si corrompe e l'habitat si guasta e le conseguenze colpiscono soprattutto i più poveri e le famiglie più povere.
The Pope insisted that work is sacred and cannot be subject to only the logic of profit and productivity. He said that's why the loss of employment causes serious social damage. He asked the audience to pray that people who are currently unemployed will find work.
In news from around the country, in Plymouth, Michigan, a conference was held to clarify the Catholic Church's position on same-sex attraction. Love one another as I have loved you, accompanying our brothers and sisters with same-sex attraction, took place August 10th through the 12th at the Inn at St. John's. Speakers at the conference said that preaching to those with same-sex attraction is critically important to evangelizing today. Father Timothy Christie, a priest from New Jersey, said same-sex attraction should be discussed in a parish setting, focusing on St. John Paul II's theology of the body and how the same standards of morality and sexuality apply to everybody. Father Christie said that the biggest hurdle for the Church to overcome is the false notion that it hates people with same-sex attractions. In news from around the world, Pope Francis will visit Cuba in September in hopes of strengthening faith in the communist country. Catholic News Service spoke to a clinical psychologist from Cuba about how religion in his home country needs that papal spark.
What's the difference between Catholic Cuba before 1959 and Catholic Cuba after 1959? 50 years of a communist government where many priests and religious were kicked out of Cuba, where it's been very difficult to allow them to come back in, where the church was only allowed to do very simple catechetic ministry within the church, where all the Catholic schools were closed, where there has been no opportunity for Catholic universities to thrive like they were before, all of that has limited the knowledge of the Cuban people. So there's a whole generation there that was basically almost, in the word of the Cuban bishops, almost lost, some returning, some couples that never married in the church, some couples that married in the sacristy of a church because they were afraid if they married in the church, they would be ousted from jobs, etc. Now, things from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 21st century, things have improved. At this point, those kinds of things are not true any longer, but the fact is, for the spiritual and moral development of Cuba, it's going to take, in my humble estimation, again, a whole generation to be able to recover all of those values. And I'm hoping that this visit, the Cuban church talks about spaces, creating spaces, increasing spaces. I think that from my first trip to Cuba in 2006 to my trip in 2015, we've seen an increase in space, in a little bit more